Jane, industrial output growth looked good, inflation looks stable. What are your thoughts now on China?
Well, it certainly seems that just as we've got used to the fact that China was at risk of coming in below the government's target in terms of growth, then suddenly we get better economic data. Now, of course, we did have a bit of a mini stimulus from the government last month. That certainly seems to have been paying dividend, and certainly does seem that we are going to have some degree of stabilization in China, and bearing in mind that we've become more pessimistic, that it's good news for all of us.
Aussie dollar, of course, which has taken such a hit of late, has been quite well supported recently. Is it time to get back in the Aussie?
I think perhaps it is. I mean, the market certainly last week was really very short the Aussie, meaning that it's always going to be therefore more vulnerable to better news. Now, this week, in terms of Australian news, we've had, of course, that rate cut, which was as expected. We've also had today the policy statement, which, if anything, was a little bit dovish. The government did revise lower its growth outlook, but the Aussie dollar's gone up, and of course, this is because of it's been reflecting Chinese news. Now, one thing that I think is noticeable from the Aussie data recently is the trade numbers. The trade data till June, it shows that in the 3 months of June, each of those 3 months, we had pretty good exports of both coal and iron ore. And again, perhaps that's a reflection of the fact that the Chinese story isn't as bad as we were thinking.
2-month lows for the US dollar. When do you start buying the dollar again? I.e., when does the Fed really start tapering, right?
Well, you know, obviously this is going to be the really big topic going into the autumn, that, and of course, and China. And we're still of the view that the Fed may wait until December to taper. Now, if that's the case, we may have to wait till later in the year to get some proper momentum behind the dollar. I mean, again, positioning is a factor which is behind the softer dollar over recent weeks. The market was very long US dollars, assuming that tapering or tightening would come sooner rather than later. The Fed pushed back against that view. The market now understands that even when tapering happens, policy settings are going to remain accommodative. So it could be late in the year, maybe next year, before we really start to get some real momentum in the dollar.
And a quick word on sterling, on the back of Mark Carney. How are you positioning your sterling right now?
Well, I mean, obviously sterling is pushed higher, and thinking actually that maybe even tightening is going to happen sooner because of the bank's forward guidance, or particularly those knockouts, those caveats. But I think Mark Carney is going to work hard to push against that view, meaning that while sterling is going to remain very well supported near term against the US dollar, I think further out he will try and dampen that view, and therefore sterling could be a little bit vulnerable at these high levels.